Ladies and gentlemen, I am here to give you good news because your boy has read Volume 1 of Berserk, the deluxe edition Volume 1. So it's a little bit bigger than like the original manga Volume 1, but got this for Christmas, read it. It's absolutely amazing. I actually also have Volume 2. I bought this one myself because I just absolutely loved Volume 1, needed the second one. But I haven't finished this, and I just wanted to focus on the main arc of the first one. Oh, it's upside down. Wanted to focus on the main arc of the first one, so that's what we're going to be talking about today. Now, just for starters, what is Berserk? Maybe you've heard about it in the manga and anime world, but you don't exactly know what it is. Maybe you've even heard that it's one of the greatest things in fiction of all time, which I have absolutely heard quite a few times, that it's like potentially one of the greatest manga ever. So, what the heck is it? Berserk is a dark fantasy, very mature themed manga. So if you are a child, probably shouldn't read it. Even if you're like 13 to 16, it might be a little bit much. I mean, who knows? Kids these days are watching and reading all kinds of stuff. But Berserk is pretty intense in terms of its content. It's about a swordsman named Guts and his adventures in the just medieval time period. He's got a giant sword, so big that people don't even really call it a sword, they just call it a heap of iron, and he lugs it around trying to get revenge on this man, if you can even call him that anymore, named Griffith. It's incredibly dark, incredibly gritty, incredibly sad, and incredibly incredible. The story is very, very good, but it is just a lot. So if you're easily squeamish, if you don't like a lot of death, don't read Berserk. But if you're okay with that and you want a really, really good story, this is the book, manga, whatever for you. Now, my introduction to Berserk was the 1997 anime. Like, when I first consumed it, I had known about it before then. I knew that people said to read the manga, but the anime was just the most accessible to me. Now, why I chose the 97 anime over any of the other ones that they've done is because, A, it was the most accessible, because I found the entire thing on YouTube. I don't know if I can say that. I don't know if that, like, it's going to get the video, like the real one, taken down, which I would hope not, because it's kind of cool that it's just up there, but it was all there, so I just watched all of it. It was pretty good. However, it's only one season, and it only covers one arc, and oh gosh, this is a really funny story. So I watched all of the anime, and I knew that, like it ends on a huge cliffhanger, and I knew that there was more to the story, but I didn't know how much more. There's quite a bit more. There's a lot more, actually. And so I made the dumb mistake of going onto the subreddit for Berserk, and I left a post. I was like, hey, just finished the first season. I know some things were left out and that the story wasn't finished. What all did I miss out on? And people were like, what? Like, people thought I was joking because of how dumb of a question that is. Basically, the 1997 anime of Berserk covers one arc of, like, several very large arcs of Berserk. Pretty much, the second volume, Volume 2, covers a good bit of that arc, and then I'm assuming like it runs into Volumes 3 and maybe 4. I haven't finished number 2. And then there's like 13 or 14 of these things. So there's quite a bit more to the story that the anime just completely leaves out. Now, is the anime good? Because a lot of people will say it's bad, some people will say it's really good, some people will say it's okay. It is very good, actually. I'm not going to sugarcoat it or underrate it. I will say that it is a very good anime. It is annoying that it's only one season. The animation is a little inconsistent. There are times when people's heads look really weird, or like their eyes are very like poorly drawn compared to them in other frames, and then sometimes there's stuff in the background that's just really weird looking. The soundtrack, though, is top tier. You don't really get a better soundtrack. It's incredibly iconic. I guarantee you that even if you have no idea what Berserk is, you have heard one of the songs from the show at least once in your life unknowingly. Because, like, Guts' theme is, like, incredibly iconic. I promise you've heard it, but you never even realized it. This is what it sounds like. Now, you may have heard that the first panel of Berserk is pretty intense, and you'd be right. And I can't show it to you, unfortunately, but it's pretty bad. It's definitely not the worst panel. It's not even the worst panel in this book. There are several that are significantly more graphic and suggestive, but it's pretty intense. But that kind of sets the tone for what the story is. I mean, the first like 3 pages, maybe it's even just 2, are very just like to the point. This is going to be the kind of material we're going to be covering in this story, so just be ready for that. Volume 1 covers the Black Swordsman arc. Now, this arc is about Guts, and he is just kind of doing his normal thing. It's just really an introductory arc. It's showing you who Guts is as a character. It gives you a little bit of backstory to like the things that have defined him. We know that he's like very very gruesome. He's gone through a lot, so he's a very jaded and like cold personality. He's okay with innocent people dying. He's okay with just leaving like situations that are in like, he's okay with being able to have helped someone but then not doing it, which is obviously not something like a normal good guy would do, but that's the point. Guts isn't necessarily a good guy, he's just the main character. If you watched the 1997 anime or you're thinking about it, I believe it's just the first episode is in this volume, kind of. It is changed a tiny bit, and like quite a bit of it is cut out, but the first moments of the 1997 anime is Guts walking into like a tavern kind of thing and then killing these like mercenary thugs, whatever, that are just kind of causing trouble. Now in the anime, I believe they're like messing with a young girl, but in the book, they're actually throwing knives, I believe it was, at a fairy named Puck. Now, I actually don't have a problem with the anime necessarily leaving out Puck, who is a major character in this. I mean, Puck is an elf that pretty much just follows Guts around for the entirety of this volume, just as like a little side character, just to kind of contrast Guts' personality. But the reason why I think it's okay that Puck isn't in the anime is because almost immediately the rest of the anime is the Golden Age arc. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, which is younger Guts. It's Guts before he turned like super duper dark. He's still pretty edgy, but he's not at the level that he is during the Black Swordsman arc. So having watched the anime, I know pretty much everything that goes on in the second volume because I've just seen all of that arc, but I'm sure there's quite a bit of stuff that's been left out. So what actually happens in volume 1? Well, just like I said, to start off, Guts is in this tavern, he finds Puck, and Puck just kind of follows him around. There are some side stories here and there, but basically we know that Guts has something on his neck called the Brand of Sacrifice. This is it right here. I am sure you have recognized it. I am sure you've seen it before. Even if you don't know that it's from Berserk, you have probably seen it on a tattoo or like as a keychain or something like that. It's very, very iconic. And this thing attracts demons and otherworldly creatures to Guts. However, he is a very capable fighter and he's able to ward them off, and he just kind of kills them and then moves on with it. However, the people around him might not be so lucky, so that's why he typically moves on his own, because when other people tend to be around him, they tend to die, because he attracts a very unpleasant crowd, one that most people aren't able to deal with on their own. And Guts doesn't really like being held down by anything, so if you're in trouble, he doesn't really want to go out of his way to help you unless it directly benefits him. That isn't always the case. Sometimes he does have a soft spot, but for the most part, that's kind of his shtick. Eventually, he ends up in this city that is ruled by this very evil count. The count is a hideous looking dude. He's like obtusely round. Like he's almost just like his skin just kind of like perfectly flows all the way down his body. He doesn't really have a neck or shoulders. He's just like a smooth egg almost. And while he's in the city, he meets a man named Vargas. Vargas is incredibly deformed. He's covered in bandages. He kind of is a little freaky looking, but he understands that. Basically, Vargas' story is he was tortured by the Count, and the Count killed his wife and daughter. Vargas begs Guts to kill the Count and to avenge him. Even if it costs Vargas his life, he just really wants the Count dead because the Count ruined his life and killed the people who he valued most. Now, Guts doesn't care about this little sob story because even though Vargas did save his life, once again, Guts doesn't really want to go out of his way to help other people. It was his choice that he saved Guts. Guts doesn't technically owe him for anything in his eyes. Now, Guts does find out that Vargas has something called a behelit. A behelit is going to be very important. A behelit is a little egg-shaped object almost, and it's red, and it has all of the facial features of a normal human, so eyes, nose, and a mouth, but they're not like ordinarily placed. They're just kind of placed all over. Now, this little thing can summon something called the God Hand, and Guts wants this object very badly. We don't necessarily know why at this point, but that is the case. So he asks Vargas for it, and Vargas gives it to him because Guts says that he might kill the Count if it works out for him. We find out that the Count has some otherworldly features, like kind of some demonic traits. You know, he has a tendency to eat flesh. He has abilities that one wouldn't have as a human. The Count catches wind that the Black Swordsman, who is Guts, that's his alias, has made it into his city, so he starts to send a bunch of soldiers after him, including a soldier that has the Count's daemon. Now, the daemon is pretty much I don't really know how to describe it. It's kind of like a demon that pretty much gives this soldier the insane bloodlust that a demon would have, and it pretty much completely takes over the mind of the soldier, except for its instinct to kill Guts. Pretty much Guts embarrassed this guy, and he wanted nothing more than to kill Guts, so the Count gives him this daemon. He becomes significantly stronger. I mean, he's like pretty much like a tentacle monster in a way. And Guts manages to kill it and then escape Vargas's home, and Vargas pleads for him to once again avenge him. Guts kind of ignores him, and then Vargas gets captured and then eventually killed publicly by the Count. Guts sees all of this, but he doesn't intervene because he knows that it's a bad idea to intervene intervene. Now, the whole point of Vargas being killed publicly is to draw out Guts, because the Count wants to kill Guts, and he wants the Behelit, more importantly, which Guts now has because Vargas gave it to him. But Guts isn't so obviously fooled, so he just kind of ignores the situation and takes control of it on his own. We find out that the Count has a daughter, and the daughter has been trapped in the castle of the Count for a very long time, and she is not allowed out of a singular room. She's just stuck there. We find all this out because Puck gets captured and given to the daughter as a gift, so she's kind of opening up to Puck, who's like a little elf, you know. Puck is kind of trustworthy seeming, at least, or at the very least, it's like, what is it going to do? Go tell somebody? It's an elf. No one's really going to care. The Count's daughter explains that the reason she's trapped in this room is because her mother, the Count's wife, was murdered by pagans, and the Count is ruthlessly trying to hunt down all of the pagans, or just like heretics, I guess you could call them. I don't know if they are necessarily pagans. That might have been a error, so I apologize on that if that's wrong. I think heretics is the word they end up using. So he's keeping her in there to be safe, which, you know, obviously isn't the best way to raise a child, but here we are. Now, Guts breaks into the castle and storms the royal chambers of the Count. This entire time it has been made very clear that Guts is no ordinary soldier, and he's able to take on at least 50 men at one time and emerge victorious. He will not be, I was going to say unscathed. He definitely will have taken a few hits, but he will be mostly okay. So he pretty much has no trouble getting to the Count's royal chambers, or whatever you want to call it, his throne room pretty much. But then the Count reveals his true power. He becomes like a giant snake monster. And the fight is unfortunately very one-sided. Guts is kind of struggling against this dude. I mean, the thing is, he's humongous. Guts really doesn't stand much of a chance. Also, the Count's daughter's name is Teresia, and eventually Teresia is led to the battle site between Guts and the Count by Puck. Now, this is obviously very troubling for the Count because Teresia is the only thing in the world that he really loves anymore. So when he sees her, and more importantly, she sees him in this monstrous state, it kind of causes some trouble, and it makes the Count even angrier with Guts, and because he blames him for it. Now, Guts takes advantage of the fact that Teresia is here, and he holds her hostage, trying to keep the Count in a specific spot. He's obviously got a plan. Now, it's at this point that it's probably a good time to mention that Guts is missing a forearm. Like, from here down, he has a mechanical arm. He can use it. It's the hand on it works mechanically, so he can still, like, use both of his hands, but more importantly, it has a crossbow, and he can, like, bend the wrist down, and it has a cannon. He uses this cannon to severely damage the Count before beheading it with his massive sword. However, before the Count can die, it summons the God Hand with the Behelit. The God Hand are 5 just kind of guardians of hell. They are very freaky looking, very bad. And one of them is named Griffith, except not actually. Griffith, or Femto, which is his God Hand name, is one of the members of the God Hand who is in a hawk-looking suit. He kind of has like a beak helmet on, and he has this massive cape. It's a very daunting figure. And it's very clear that Guts has a big problem with Griffith. I'm definitely skipping over a lot of details here because I don't want the video to be too long, because this is just supposed to be like a brief recap and review, so I'm just going to keep moving, but do know that a lot more happens in this volume, and I've skipped a lot of stuff, like almost completely, that is important to Guts' story, but this is just a brief overview of the most important aspects. The reason that the Count summoned the God Hand is because he wants to make a sacrifice. He's trying to save his life and kill Guts at the same time. However, in order to save his own life, he must sacrifice that which he holds dear, which at this point, like I mentioned, is only Teresia. Now, everyone has been teleported to this, like, almost like hellscape in a way. It's just a bunch of staircases all over the place, but the people who are there are Guts, the Count, Teresia, and Puck. So now the Count is required to either forsake his own daughter to save his life, or to be given to hell and die. Now, here it's also revealed that the actual story behind the Guts' wife's death is not that she was killed by heretics, it's that she actually was a heretic, and that the Count killed her in his rage of her disobeying. Now, ultimately, the Count decides not to sacrifice his own daughter. He does just die, and he just goes to hell like the God Hand said he would. And obviously, this entire experience is incredibly traumatizing for Teresia. I mean, she has literally no idea what's happening, and all the while Guts is losing his mind trying to lunge at this God Hand member named Griffith, or Femto. The Count gets dragged to hell, and the demon that is pulling him the hardest, who we see the most clearly, is Vargas. But because the Count dies, the God Hand leaves, and Guts, Puck, and Teresia are sent back into the real world. That pretty much concludes the Black Swordsman arc, and then the next arc begins with a very young Guts giving his story about what happened as a child. Pretty much, he was born from a dead woman, which is a bad omen, and a group of mercenaries found him. They knew who the woman was, but she still gave birth to him and died in the process, so Guts stuck around with the band of mercenaries and they kind of raised him, but none of them were very happy about it because they believed he was a bad omen. I won't get super into that arc because I'm going to do that in the next video, but that was the general overview of the Black Swordsman arc. And in my opinion, what a great arc of manga. It's incredibly brutal, but it is just an incredibly interesting story. From what I know about the Golden Age arc, the one that is in the 1997 anime, that arc is definitely better, but I think this is a great introductory arc to what this kind of story is capable of and what we can expect to see in the future arcs. Which for me, I don't know anything that happens outside of the Golden Age arc, so I'm very excited to see what the story will continue to hold after I start getting into new content. I love the way that it sets up the larger aspects of this world, you know, with stuff like the God Hand, the Behelots, like where did they come from? It opens up a lot of potential ideas that could be explored upon in the future, but it doesn't do so in a way that makes you feel like stuff is just being left out. It just very delicately toes the line of making you curious and interested without making you annoyed that stuff isn't being revealed. Guts is a great main character. I mean, he is obviously not a great person all the time, but sometimes that's just the case. I think the story is very realistic in that manner because Guts is just a byproduct of what he has experienced. I love the character of Vargas. I love the story of the Count and how dark he is and how he just kind of let evil consume him to become the monster that he was. And just the story of Guts, just his whole persona of just never giving up and having a goal that he wants to accomplish so wrathfully that it just allows him to get through any situation is somewhat inspiring, just a little bit, to just have a goal that you want so bad that you're willing to stop at nothing to achieve it. But it's also insightful to just not let your goals or your passions or your past completely define you and consume you. So in conclusion, how good is Volume 1 of the Berserk Deluxe Edition? My rating out of 10, I would give it a solid 8.5. I think it's very, very good. It's definitely a great introductory arc. There wasn't necessarily anything I would have changed, but it's just not as good as like the Golden Age arc is that I know of. Because I do know that some details were left out of that arc that are in the manga, which I will obviously be reading very soon and making a video. Probably make some more videos in the future that are less recappy and more just kind of discussing the philosophy of Berserk and some specific things that happen and just what that kind of says about the story, or just Guts as a character overall. But other than that, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it that you watched all the way till the end of the video. This is probably one of my longer videos I've put out, but hey, Berserk is a very deep story. It requires a lot of attention to detail. It requires a lot of discussion, so I think it was definitely worth it. But thank you for sticking around all the way till the end. I hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure you hit the like button and comment below what you thought of the video, what you think of Berserk overall, if you think that Griffith is just absolutely the worst person of all time, which he kind of is. Yeah, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you enjoyed the video. I mean, if you watched all the way till the end, I feel like you kind of want to subscribe, you know? No, I'm kidding. If you don't want to, I get it. But I would really appreciate it if you did. So, have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one.